Good morning. My name's Brendan. My connection to country is on my mother's side. We're Marrawarra, Barkindji, Lake Victoria, Darling River. And my father is Tanami Desert, so Aranda, Walpuri. And of course there's a little bit of Irish in there as well. And what I'm here to do this morning, talk a little bit about some artefacts and tools and weapons. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to nap some stone, work some stone. So we'll start off with our boomerangs. Now I've got a few different types of boomerangs. Here you can see they're different types, different size, different shapes. Some are thicker, some are thinner, and again some are bigger. So what we would use these were boomerangs for. These are our returning boomerangs. So these boomerangs, they come back. And one of the reasons that we would use these boomerangs for is for hunting birds and ducks. So when we see a whole lot of ducks or birds, I throw the boomerang, and what the boomerang does is it spins. And so when the boomerang flies, and if all the birds are flying, it'll fly into where the birds and ducks are, it'll spin, and it'll hit one, then maybe another one, and if I don't hit any, the boomerang will come back. And how we catch it is we catch it like that, the returning boomerang. Now the returning boomerang is very clever in how it's made. So if we were to pretend that this is an airplane, and both the front edges on that airplane are fatter and the back edges of the airplane are thinner. Now on the returning boomerang, what we need to do is to turn one of the wings around. So now this wing is thinner on the front and thicker on the back, and this wing is thicker on the front and thinner at the back. So what that means is that boomerang just is going to spin around. Now if we were to do that on an airplane, that airplane wouldn't go anywhere, it'd just spin around like this. And that's how we make our returning boomerang. So when we throw the boomerang, it spins, and then it comes back, it surfs the wind. So we've got to throw it into the wind, and it'll come around, and again we catch it like that. If we were to catch it like this and the boomerang come back, well, then we might end up with only 4 fingers. So that's a returning boomerang. These other 2 boomerangs, again, they're returning boomerangs. You can see they're a bit bigger, a little bit thicker, some are heavier, some are lighter, all used for the same things, for hunting. And these 2 boomerangs here, these 2 boomerangs come from the Central Desert area, and these boomerangs are called Wilkie, or number 7s, because they're shaped like a number 7. And these boomerangs are used for hunting. We don't throw them like a returning boomerang, we throw them flat, so they fly like a frisbee. Another thing we use these boomerangs for is for music. We can play slow, or we can play fast. So these are our hunting, killing boomerangs. Now if I was to walk around in the bush, if I was out in the desert, what I would carry I'd have these 2 boomerangs, and I'd have my shield. And the shield is only thin because Aboriginal people knew that if somebody was going to throw a spear at me, if I was to stand there and look at them, look how much of a target I am. They've got all that area, and then therefore I'd need a bigger shield. But if I turn side on, I halve the target. And the shield is only to deflect. And if you can see on this shield, we've got lines. There are lines on this shield. They're on there for two reasons. One is if a spear hits that shield, if it was smooth and flat, I couldn't control the deflection of where that spear is going to go. But because it's got the lines on it, if a spear hits the shield, I can push it that way, I can push it that way, I can push it up, I can push it down, because the spear will hit the lines and helps me control it. The other reason for the lines is if I had my killer boomerang, my wilkie, and if I rubbed it on the shield hard and long enough, that's how I'd make my fire. If I just rubbed that boomerang on there really hard, I'd make a little coal, and then I could tip that into a little bit of grass, and that's how I make my fire, by rubbing the wood together. Now if we were to do a little experiment, and if you were to put your hands together and you rub them really hard and tight, you'll feel your hands getting warm and hot. And that's how it works when I rub the wood together. Just making that fire, rubbing it hard together. Another thing I'd use if I was out in the bush is the axe or mogo. Now the stone axe, how I've made this is, it's a branch off a tree. I cut down the little shape, little handle, and then I put a knot or a hole inside the branch. So you can see that the stone has gone through the middle of the branch. And then I'd use some sap. You can see that black sticky stuff on there, that's sap from a tree. And I heat that up in the fire or in a tin can till it goes soft. Then I take it out and I stick it on there, and then I get some string and I tie that on there as well. How I'd sharpen the stone is I'd rub the stone on another stone, and that makes it nice and sharp. So that's our stone axe or mogo. Now these two things, they're similar to a boomerang, and they're what they call battle axe. And the battle axes we use them for fighting. You can see they're different. You can throw it as well. This one you can throw like a boomerang, or you'll see it's got a hook on it. If you've got a really itchy back, you can reach over there and scratch your back with it. Give it a good scratch. Now this one here, this one's got a lot of different names depending on where you come from. A bundi, nulla nulla, and all that is again the branch off a tree, carve the ball onto it, and that's used. We use that for fighting. They're nulla nulla, or bundi, and these two really big wilkies or throwing sticks. So we would use these as a throwing stick to throw at birds, emu, or we can make music again with them. Now another thing we have here is a Kulemin. Everyone knows this as a Kulemin or a carrying dish. A lot of things you can use the dish for. We can use it to carry water in it. We can use it to put bush tucker in there. We can carry bread. We can dig with it. Or you could put it on your head on a really hot day and you're a Kulemin. I've got two types of Kulemin. Here, I've got a bigger one. Now with the bigger Kulemin, we can use that. I can put kangaroo skin in there and carry the baby around in there. And you'll notice that this Kulemin's also got lines on it. And the reason why it's got lines on it is because the women would usually carry the Kulemin, and the women need to make their fire as well. So the women have their own boomerangs called Kylie, like the girl Kylie. And the man's boomerang Wilkie comes from the branch of the tree, and the woman's boomerang Kylie comes from the roots of the tree. So the women, they could rub their boomerang on the Kulemin as well and make their fire. And the women also would carry around the digging stick. I like to call this Yulby, because you'll be sore when you get hit with it. So Yulby is a digging stick, and we would dig for witchetty grub, honey ants, goanna. So that's your digging stick. Now some other things I brought in today as well is a kangaroo skin. Now kangaroo, a lot of different names depending on the language group you come from. My father's country is called Marlu. Marlu is kangaroo. And as I said, I've got two different types. I've got this one and this one. Now there is a difference between these two besides the colour. You'll notice this one's a bit red and this one's a bit browny. So the different kangaroo. But it's got something to do with the length of hair on the kangaroos. This one, his hair's longer. And this one, he's only got short hair. So the short-haired kangaroo, he comes from the hot area. The short-haired kangaroo. The long-haired kangaroo, he comes from the colder area. So when it's cold, you put on lots of clothes, jumper to keep warm. When it's hot, you don't wear all those clothes to keep warm because you need to keep cool. So these two come from two different areas. This one's from the hot area and this one's from the cold area. So the kangaroo skin has lots of different things we can use it for. One is that we can put the kangaroo skin on and make a jacket to keep us warm and dry. Another thing we can use the kangaroo skin for is if I was to sew up all the edges on this kangaroo skin, sew it all up, sew it all up. What I've actually made is a water bottle. I can fill that up with water in there in the kangaroo skin. Now I've heard that the Eora women back in the day would use possum skin, and what they would use possum skin for is to make a musical instrument out of it. So they would fold the possum skin up, very similar to this. They'd fold it all up, sit it in their lap and play it like a drum. So that's your two different types of skin in kangaroo, what we use them for. Of course we eat the kangaroo as well. Now the other thing that I've brought in today as well, I'll just get it. Is some stone. Now this is very special stone. This is the stone we use to make our knives and our spearheads out of. The whitefellas call this stone chert. And chert is only found in certain areas. Can't find it everywhere. And there's a special way how we use this stone. You don't just, when you find it, just don't grab the stone and hit it. What you've got to do to work the stone is to find a flat edge. When you find a flat edge, before even that, you need to find your hammer stones or your tapping stones. Different types, the heavier the tapping stone, the bigger the chunk that will come off the chert. So if I just put it on an edge, here's an edge, and what I want to do is I want to hit on the top of that edge so that the stone flakes underneath. So if I was to start tapping it, you'll see, and I'll just pick up these little chips that have come off. You'll see these little chips that have come off that stone, and they're very sharp, and I could use that stone for cutting, for scraping. If I wanted to scrape a kangaroo skin and get the meat off, scrape that off. I could gut a fish with that little stone. And if I wanted to make a spearhead, I'd need a bigger piece of stone. And it's important you listen. You can hear the sound of that, and you can hear the sound of that. And that tinging sound, that's the sound that I want. I don't want that sound. That's too heavy, too thick. I want that sound. So I hit it on an edge. And there's a bigger piece of stone. And again, it's very sharp. And if I wanted to make that a little bit more sharper, I've got a littler stone. And what I do with the smaller stone is I just gently push it on the little rock. And you can see if I keep shaping that, you can see there's a line in the middle of the stone. And if I just keep gently tapping a little bit, tapping a little bit, tapping a little bit, you can see how now I'm starting to get the shape of a spearhead. It might take a little while, but I just keep tapping very gently. Just keep tapping it on the edge, and you can see how again it's just starting to shape into a spearhead. And when I finish, I can stick that on the end of my spear, and away we go. And that's how we work stone. That's called knapping. So thank you once again for having me here and for listening. And I hope you enjoyed my little session today. And I'll quickly go through the names of the boomerangs. So the male boomerangs, in my father's language, is called Wilkie, and the lady boomerangs is called Kylie. And the male boomerang, that comes from the branch of the tree, and the lady's boomerang comes from the roots of the tree.